Hello, and welcome to the Recovered Republican, where we try to cut through all of the noise and get down to what really matters to everyday Hoosiers. And today we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Cinde Wirth. She is running for Indiana's 6th congressional district, so help me welcome her to the stage.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you today?
Good. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Awesome. I am so excited to talk to you, but let's start with just what you're running for, who can vote for you, and your full name as it will appear on the ballot.
So I'm Cinde Wirth, running for Indiana's 6th congressional district. What that district includes is over 3,000 square miles in 11 counties. It's a fairly large district. It's the southern 3 townships of Marion County, the northern 3/4 of Bartholomew County, the southern part of Randolph County, and all of Johnson, Shelby, Hancock, Rush, Fayette, Union, and Wayne counties. So and that should be all 11 counties. But again, over 3,000 square miles in those 11 counties.
That's a very large that's a large district.
It is all the way from Richmond to Indianapolis, all along I-70, and then down to Columbus on 65. So there's a lot of interstate road in there.
I'm sure. Yeah. But let's talk about, what do you do for a living?
So I just completed my PhD in cultural and educational policy in December. My husband and I have a small business, but I mostly do consulting for educational and sustainability projects. So what that is looking like lately, it involves developing modern educational spaces and programs for secondary education, mostly science, and higher education students. And then small scale population renewable energy solution proposals. So areas that will require 1 megawatt or less.
Okay. That was a lot of information, some of which I did not understand. That's okay. It sounds like you're a very intelligent person and working on some very technical things. But tell us about your family. It sounds like you're married.
So I've been married for 33 years to my husband. We have 2 grown children. They have their own lives and careers. But we still have 2 dogs at home with us. And hopefully you will not hear from either one of them today.
Those are always unpredictable, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, tell us what made you want to run.
So I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, and I taught high school science. And every day, what I saw in my classroom were families that were stretched to the breaking point. There were kids working jobs to help support their family. There were kids providing daycare because there was no affordable daycare available. This meant kids would miss school for these jobs and these caretaking roles. Everything from medical bills, low wages, rising rent, and even when I was in the classroom, inflation was still, a concern of many. I had students who would have their utilities shut off and would come in and not know what to do. These are high school students. I remember one time a student said, "We're going to lose everything in our refrigerator. We just went to the store. Our power got turned off, so we arranged, coolers and people coming to show up to help them, navigate getting the power turned back on, safeguarding their food, putting it in, personal freezers and refrigerators." Those are the kinds of struggles that I think most Hoosiers and most people in the 6th district see in every corner of our district, from Indianapolis to Richmond, the rural areas in between. And we can and we must do better. So I ended up as a fellow working on Capitol Hill. And what I saw when I was there was a way that I could represent Hoosiers and make the changes to the policies that would help improve people's lives. And I'm running because I can use my experiences in my classroom and the experiences I've had on Capitol Hill directly for working families here in Indiana.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that teachers generally learn to not take a lot of BS. Would you agree?
That's absolutely 100% correct. And I think we do need people who will stand up to what's going on right now, hold every elected representative, colleague responsible for the decisions that they're making, and really put pressure on them to make decisions that help people and don't just add to their own political gain or their own political score, because it's really, our representative government is about people.
Yeah, and we need normal everyday people, and you don't have to be a lawyer to be in politics.
Right.
So let's talk about your priorities. Let's say you win. What is your number one priority, do you think?
Right now, healthcare. It is the number one piece where if we're not healthy, what else do we have? I mean, there are so many, we need jobs, we need to safeguard public education, we need better prescription prices, we need fair wages. The list is endless, but I think we really need right now, especially with what we've seen with the premiums of the Affordable Care Act rising, we've got to tackle healthcare.
Absolutely. I will say it again and again, but I think that we should not be paying for another country's healthcare when we don't have guaranteed healthcare in America.
We need universal healthcare here. And I am for universal healthcare. Why? Number one, it's the most fiscally responsible way that we can do healthcare in the United States. It's good for our country. It's financially good for all of us, and it's medically good for all of us. I know that I've looked into this deeply, and if you take a conservative estimate on the administrative costs for what we pay in private insurance, it covers about 25 to 30% of all healthcare costs. Those are just the private insurance administrative costs, billions of dollars. If we took private and people working in private healthcare insurance and transferred them and shifted them to work in universal healthcare for all of us, costs would drop to less than 2% of all healthcare costs. This would save us almost immediately $400 billion, I think, without any job loss, no net job losses. So people would still be employed. So all of the critiques and things that people fling out and say, well, you can't because of this and you can't because of this, it's all been addressed. It is possible. We have a roadmap, we have a plan, and we just need people to stand up and say, this is what we need as a country to make sure we're all healthy, and actually we'll all financially benefit from it as well.
So it sounds like we can't afford not to go to universal health care when you put it like that.
And I think that's exactly it. And when we look at how far the premiums have risen, and again, these are through commercial insurance companies, who's winning? We're not. We're not at all. Our doctors and nurses who are trying to keep us healthy are not winning. They don't have enough time to spend with patients. If we go to a universal healthcare, they get time back with patients. Like 15 to 20% of their time is spent on this paperwork, also the administrative work. And so that's time they can spend with patients with us. Gone are copays and deductibles. No more standing in line at the pharmacy and having to go back and say, oh, you have to rebill this because I have a coupon because I can't pay $1,800. And which one of the coupons is going to be the best? Pharmacists will win. So it really, and if you've been to the pharmacy and you've had to use a coupon and you've had to stand there for 45 minutes while they rebill things, if you're sick, it's difficult. And so for some people, it's nearly impossible. And I've been reading lately online since January, a lot of people weren't informed that their copays were going to change, especially people on Medicare, Medicaid, and other people on regular insurance. And so they're getting to the pharmacy to fill their January prescriptions, and they're getting these sticker shocks of, where it was $35 before, now it's $900. And I keep reading about these on the internet. And again, I was in the pharmacy and using a coupon. And, there were other people there. There was one lady in tears. This is not how we take care of our country. This is not how we take care of each other. We've lost the plot on what really we need for each other, and that's to take care of each other. And that's what universal health care does.
I agree. I am all for universal health care. I think it would save the country a lot of money. Yes, at first it would be a cost because there's been a lot of people who have been without health care for so long that, yeah, of course, when they get health care, they are going to go use it. And that's okay. That's what it's there for.
Right.
But it is it's not something that just affects people who are older. I have been a person who has been sickly almost my entire life. I had a seizure disorder when I was in middle school, and I had it and didn't grow out of it till I was about 25. Those medications on insurance are absolutely crazy expensive without insurance. And it wasn't like I could go without a seizure medication. But so yeah, I've been there, and I was a teenager in the pharmacy doing that even, and now I'm 37 and it's just gotten worse. And it's not just me, and it's not just people who look sick. It's a lot of people. A lot of people are on medications in this country because we have not focused on our health and making sure that the general population is healthy in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And it, when you think about people who do have medication and the choices that people are being forced to make right now, we saw a young man die because he chose not to refill his inhaler because he couldn't afford it. And I can't remember what state that was in. We're seeing these choices being made daily by our population, and it's just it's like I said, we've lost the plot. The plot is that we take care of each other, and this is how we can do that. The plot isn't what company can run away with the most billions of dollars in the shortest amount of time. That's not what healthcare is about.
Right. Well, speaking of taking care of each other, let's talk about veterans, because that's a big talking point in general, especially on the right. So, do you think we're taking care of our veterans right now?
My dad and my brother are both veterans. So I've been to the VA with my dad, and I will say I remember what it was like when veterans came home from Vietnam, and I saw what happened and is still happening with our veterans who have come home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And veteran lives are not a line item on a budget that needs to be managed for efficiency or cost effectiveness. Veterans are human beings who have put their lives on the line for all of us, and it is our duty to take care of them. We owe them. And I think that continuity of care for veterans is critically important, because if you're going in every time to get care and you're seeing someone different or somebody's rotating through, that's not how best to take care of people. That's starting over every month, every visit, every provider interaction that you have, and that doesn't help people. And so I think there's a lot of things that need to happen in veteran care. And again, universal health care is the foundation for that. And I think that universal health care will help everyone, including our veterans, because then we have one system and we're not navigating two or three.
Okay. Makes sense to me. And I agree. I've known veterans who literally had kidney stones and almost died because they could not get care fast enough. And I'm like, that is absurd. If you're putting your life on on the line for your country, and we say we're going to take care of you and you have these benefits, if you do this, then you should have those benefits.
Yeah, I agree. And taking care of people. That's what the government is for. It is to help take care of people. We do take care of ourselves, but we also, if we all pay in, how much easier that is if we, spread that out among all of us. And that's really what this is all about. We don't have to reinvent the wheel either. Massachusetts kicked this off as in a Republican administration 20 some years ago. It works really well. So we have a guide right here in the United States.
Well, I love that. And I didn't know we had a guide. So that's great. But let's talk a little bit about veterans and homelessness. I think that also there is a big housing crisis in this country. And now, even in Indiana, they're trying to criminalize homelessness. I don't think that this is the way to do it. The way we're doing this is not humane, and again, it's not supporting veterans because almost 50% of our homeless population are veterans.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I think everybody needs to be able to afford a roof over their head. And affordable house, we have a shortage of affordable housing across the United States. What will help veterans as well as everyone? And again, I'm for solutions that help everyone, because by helping everyone, we help veterans. We need incentives from the federal level to build affordable housing again. We've had these before. And again, a lot of the things I'm going to say aren't new. We've had them before. We can do it again. We've had home buyer credits, first-time home buyer credits, or new home buyer credits, where there are tax incentives for people to purchase new homes. Those have been available in the past. We can bring those back. Those can be done from a federal level. They can also be administered through the state level. So there are a lot of solutions that we can make for this, in addition to providing programs from the federal level for veterans for housing specifically. That's another avenue that we can work through that. But the housing crisis is nationwide. It cuts across all demographics. It cuts across age. It cuts across the lower rungs of socioeconomic. Middle class people who are working can't find affordable homes and are living in cars, and showering at gyms and going into their jobs. So the housing crisis is widespread, and I am aware, and I do know that veterans are the number one population that struggles with housing. But I think also giving them autonomy of the solutions that work best for them is critically important. And I think too many times people want to have solutions that are top down and say, this is what you're going to do and here's where you're going to go. And I think we really need to focus on working toward giving people who are experiencing whatever the situation is a voice in their own solutions. And I think too many times we forget that.
Yeah. So there's been some activity in the comments that I've been trying to take care of. But what would you say to somebody who says that people who are homeless are choosing to be homeless? They want to be homeless. That's why they're homeless.
I think that can be the case. And I think giving people who do make that choice, and I have certainly met people who do choose that because they don't want to, it's just their choice. It's how they decide they want to live. And I think that should be a valid choice for people. I think also, though, we need to be able to have resources available for people if they decide that's no longer their choice. And I think punishing people for homelessness is wrong. There are people who have all kinds of ways that they want to live their lives. And part of the thing that we need to respect is that they have that choice. And if they're able to make that choice and do that, are they able to get to the things that they need, whether they have an address or not is really the critically important part.
Absolutely. Like if you're choosing to be a vagabond, what is it? Urban camping is what people call it. That's fine. If you want to do that, and that's fine because you want to decrease your eco footprint or whatever the case may be, that is fine. But there are also a lot of people not choosing it, and they are homeless because they have mental health struggles and they aren't getting treatment. And again, that kind of goes back into the universal health care. I think that a big way to help with the homeless population is to do universal health care.
It is, because those wraparound services, again, what's important with people who are not housed at whatever point in time is that they have access to services and resources that they need. And that's that critical part, whether it's mental health, whether it's physical, medical health, whether it's jobs, whether it's career, whether it's, whatever it is that they need resources for and access to, that's what we really need to provide them. And I think um, then I think that's really what our position is that we need to be focusing on. And I do think there are a lot of situations where organizations come in and tell people where they should be and what they should be doing. And I don't think anybody really likes to live like that.
You want to provide options, it sounds like.
Yes.
That's,
and give people agency. Without agency, what do we have?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about more agency and maybe call it autonomy. Do you think that we need to codify something similar to Roe in this country?
Absolutely. 100%. I think people should be in charge of their own healthcare decisions, making decisions about their own bodies. And in conjunction with licensed physicians who have a duty of care to safeguard people, I think that's what the spaces where those decisions need to be made, and not in the legislative arena, and not with a legislator sitting in that exam room.
I think that makes logical sense to me. And I don't have any questions about that, to be honest. And so I would love to pivot a little bit. And I would like to hear your thoughts on immigration policy in this country. Do you like it? What would you like to see changed or totally reconstructed?
So if you remember back to the summer of 2024, we had a really good, thorough, comprehensive, bipartisan supported bill ready to pass both the House and the Senate in the United States Congress. What was included in that was training for Customs and Border Patrol. There was a lot included in that. It allowed for criminals to be prioritized for removal. But that bill was tanked solely for election reasons. And it was tanked toward the end of the summer in 2024. And then Congress recessed. And that was purely 100%, admittedly by Republicans, tanked for the election. I think ICE, as it functions now, snatching people off the street, ignoring or abandoning any sort or form of due process, or innocent until proven guilty, any of those rights that we have in our Constitution. They're currently terrorizing, kidnapping, and killing our own citizens on our streets. That needs to stop today. ICE needs to be abolished as it stands today. There's no place for that in our civil society that is ruled by a constitution with our First Amendment, our Fourth Amendment, and our just it just seems ridiculous to me that we even have to have this conversation, because it is what our country was founded on, and these amendments are being totally disregarded, and I think it's time that really is taken seriously enough by people that we have elected, who are in Congress right now, that they stand up for these rights.
Absolutely. I know that I have been encouraging people to call Todd Young. If you have not called Todd Young and asked him to defund ICE, please do so. Even if you have to leave a message, that's fine. But we think that he is more likely to switch his vote than Jim Banks is. And I think that's valid. So it is absurd that people who every school event that has happened has said it is not the guns, it's the people, except in the specific instance of Alex Preddy, where now it's, well, he should have known better. Well, it cannot be both. Either it's protect the Second Amendment, or you should have known better not to bring a gun around ICE agents. It cannot be both.
I think right now that the narrative is convenient for whatever needs to be pushed to repress our First and Second and Fourth Amendments. That's what seems to be happening. I grew up in a family of hunters. Gun safety was critical. In fact, the NRA was the leader in gun safety, and right now gun safety is lacking. The instance that you're talking about isn't about gun safety, but because everything was done appropriately according to our Constitution, our laws, everything. So I think that is just a shifted narrative to defend actions that were unconstitutional by our ICE agents. 90% of Americans support smarter, safer gun laws, common sense gun laws. These are universal background checks, red flag laws, expansions that remove those exemptions from people who are domestic abusers, people who are at risk for gun violence. It closes those loopholes for gun shows, which Indiana leads. I think we may even lead Texas in gun shows. And it closes that loophole for private sales. It helps those the trafficking that goes on between states with stricter gun laws and states like Indiana, where we essentially have none, which our own police officers even fought against when it was passed in our state legislature. But federally, we need to strengthen these gun trafficking penalties and reinstate the assault weapons ban. Like I said, I grew up in a family of hunters. You don't need an assault weapon to hunt. This keeps hunting rifles untouched. And high-capacity magazines really don't have any place on our streets or in our society. In fact, the U.S. military keeps them locked up. So, when we look at who has the guns, where are they used, what are they used for, and they're following different gun safety policies than they're expecting the general public to follow, I think we need to take a closer look at that. And I am not for taking everybody's guns away, but I think we really need to be smart about it. I was a classroom teacher. I have shepherded kids through those drills. In fact, when I started teaching high school, and the kids I had been through those drills for 9 years before they got to me. And I was a first-year teacher going through these, and kids had 9 years experience over the adult in the room at doing these it's now run, hide, fight. And when you look at what we've done to our children in schools and what they've been through, talk to some of them. What was it like as a kid, with all this adrenaline rushing through you and being terrified? And if you did happen to be in a school like mine was, because we were next to a bank that was locked down because of something happening at the bank, and you don't know what it is, it's terrifying. And there's just no other word for it. So I think we're doing our students, our young people, a great disservice, and subjecting them to a lot of things that could be avoided. Not totally avoided, I mean, obviously, but I think the whole culture around that is problematic. And gun safety and smarter gun laws are really the critical part. There's when one of the school shootings happened, one of my last years I was teaching, I had seniors. So I had freshmen and seniors. So my senior class, we were talking about this because these students were just absolutely distraught. And so we talked about it. And I asked how many people had guns in their home. Every hand but one went up. And I asked how many of them had ever been through a gun safety class or been trained in gun safety. And one student out of that entire class, out of all those students that had guns in their house, one student had a dad who was in the military who actually taught them gun safety.
Which is wild, because I went through gun safety because we had guns in one of my homes. My parents are divorced, and that was something that we learned. We went to Eagle Creek when the police officers used to run it, and you could go there and pay, and they do safety instruction. And I think it's very important, because even just basics, like with a handgun, you can tear up your hand if you don't know what you're doing. You can hurt yourself very easily in ways that you don't think of. Yeah. So it just seems silly and irresponsible to keep our gun laws so lax.
And I mean, the reason why we haven't passed these is because of the lobbying that's done and the millions of dollars that are changing hands for politicians. And that's the egregious part that really needs to end.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a little bit of a smaller population, but I still think it's an important population. What things do you think need to be legislated when we're talking about trans people or LGBTQIA individuals?
It's pretty simple. I'm going to go back to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment guarantees everyone equal protection under the law. Doesn't matter your race, your faith, who you love, anything. And it's just as simple as rights for LGBTQ people, that includes trans people, for anyone, are civil rights.
Yeah. I don't know why so many people have such a hard time thinking about such a small population. When people say, if you don't like gay people, don't get gay married, it just means like you do you and let other people do what they want to do because it's not hurting anyone.
Right. And again, we have that protection. So
yes, we should have that protection. I don't know if it's being respected as much as it should be. So let's talk about education, though, because I feel like, especially in Indiana, our public schools are struggling. What can we do moving forward to better fund our public education and more equally fund our schools? Because I think it's a disservice to our school systems to base everything on property value, because then if you don't live in an affluent area, well, that's just too bad for you, I guess.
yeah, our public school funding formula is broken. I have my PhD is in cultural and educational policy. So I've studied this a lot from a lot of different angles. At the way Indiana's current funding works is that we are handing out $7,000, I think, checks to basically even wealthy families for private school tuition, while our public school classrooms go underfunded. Public schools have to, by law, take every student. Private schools may select their students and remove students as at whim. And I think when we set this up where we have wealthy people able to take public tax dollars and put those into private schools, that actually violates our separation of church and state. The Supreme Court did rule against that, saying, well, it's really public schools. But when you trail that all the way back, it's not. It is going to private schools. It is going to religious schools. It is going to sectarian schools. And our whole public education system, supported by tax dollars, was set up to avoid that. Federally, we need to re-strengthen, because it has been watered down, weakened, and almost dissolved, our Department of Education. And our Department of Education is really important for public schools because our rural schools depend on these funds, the Title I funds and other title funds, to serve our students in basic things like math and reading. And without these funds, it becomes, like you said, there's not enough wealth there to fund these schools. So we rely on other sources of funding for it. And our rural schools are the ones that really, and our urban schools really lose. The Individual with Disabilities Act was put into place so that every student, whether they're disabled or not, is able to receive a high quality public education for free. And when we start taking away the Department of Education at the federal level, we lose this. And what that means is that students who are disabled or differently abled lose support and lose funding for programs to serve their educational needs. Right now, Indiana schools are being forced, and I think all schools across the nation are being forced to adopt block grants instead of direct title funds, which makes it so that those dollars don't have to go toward students' special education programs, the students with different abilities, and doesn't have to be used for their educations.
So explain that a little bit
I know
more.
it's a really complicated answer. So at the federal level, we take all of this money and we put it back into schools who meet certain qualifications, rural, income, things like that.
Title I.
That's what keeps our schools able to serve students in rural areas, in low-income urban areas, places like that. And you can look for Title I schools in a lot of places. But it sort of levels that playing field for all students. And that's what education does. Education is free and public education for everyone, gives everyone the same chance to move forward in their lives. And the Individual with Disabilities Act, those are our kids with IEPs and 504s. Those are kids with medical problems. Those are kids with diabetes. Those are kids with learning disabilities, with physical disabilities. And what those funds do, what that law guarantees, is that those children, students, can receive a free public education also in the best place that's suited for their needs, the least restrictive environment. So that means usually a public school classroom, with their peers, not set apart, not different. And that's huge. It was huge wins, when those laws passed. What's happening now is the funding for those programs are being shifted to other things. Vouchers, which are now going to private schools. Private schools do not have to abide by the same laws to serve every student, whether they're poor, whether they're able or disabled. Public schools do.
Yeah. And they can choose to kick out a student mid-year, and they don't have to give voucher money back. And then that student has to go to public school.
Yes.
And so we have to pay for that student twice. To me, the voucher program is very much a waste of money when you look at it that way, because these private and charter schools are not held to the same standards. But thank you for explaining that more. As somebody who is a speech therapist, I know a little bit more about that, but it's so complicated. I just wanted to get it out there a little bit more for people who maybe don't, because I was like, that is a very complex answer.
It is.
So,
it is, and it's a complex topic, but it's actually very simple. And that's what people don't understand. They say, oh, well, at the federal level, we don't need education because we have it at the state level. But we do, because we don't have these protections and these monies available from the state level to do what they do at the federal level. And it's been very successful. If you went to a public school in the 70s or 80s or 90s, you really benefited from all of this, and even into the 2000s. We're seeing those kinds of things kind of rolled back. If you do work in a school system, I know there are different kinds of therapy that are done in schools for students, and speech language therapy and
occupational
therapy. There's some physical therapy. Those kinds of things that were done in the school setting, where kids are with their peers, and maybe they're pulled out for like 10 minutes. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe, I don't know what all the time frame is with them. Maybe it's part of their classroom experience, and the professional is in with them. That's the way it should be, because then they're still with their peers. They're not taken away. And it's a huge part of successful school for so many students. And it's really unfortunate that we're seeing these cuts in the name of, again, I'm going to say that we have human beings. We don't have line items on a budget for efficiency and cost effectiveness. These are human beings who are learning.
Absolutely.
And as a teacher, I had to take a lot of those students who were removed from private schools, but we didn't receive any money for, which in one case almost doubled the size of one of my classes. Right? So it impacts every student when that happens. It impacts every teacher when that happens. And people don't think about that. And you're absolutely right about that. It happens more often than anyone would ever imagine.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also discuss the fact that it's called push-in therapy when you do it in the classroom. That's what we call it. And the reason we do that is because we know from research that children who are with their same age peers are going to get much more out of that experience than if they are off in like a special education classroom or held back, because then it's like they still have awareness. They still know that they're different, and that just makes it worse partially. And then also doing push-in therapy is so helpful because if there's a specific problem in a classroom, you can problem solve with that therapist and work together to come up with a solution for that student. So I just wanted to mention that because a lot of people don't realize that. And I see a lot of places being like, well, they're little, like, let's keep them back because they're not talking it. And I'm like, no, we need to move them up because they are aging and they still know what's going on. They're just not at a point that they can talk yet. But pivoting a little bit,
Yeah,
with the
absolutely.
economy.
And I love that you have experience with that, and that you must be a professional in that. And I think, again, I think we have so many unsung heroes in our school systems, and that's one that I couldn't have done the job that I did without the professionals who were coming into my classroom and working with my students. And it was incredible. And when I was first growing up, that wasn't the case when I was in kindergarten, first and second grade.
Yeah. That I don't think people realize how recent those laws came into existence.
Yeah.
I believe that IDEA was like 1998 or 88. I'm trying to remember. It's an 8. But that's not that long ago.
Yeah, it's not.
So people don't realize that these things are so important, and you also don't get those kind of services in private schools. You still receive services, but it is cut usually in half or by a third. So it's much more beneficial for your child to go to a public school if they do have an IEP. So, but let's talk about the economy a little bit. How do you think our economy is doing? What do you think we should be doing differently? Are the tariffs working?
I don't think the tariffs are working because I am not sure the current people who are pushing the tariffs out really truly understand who's paying the tariffs. Because we, the American people, are paying these tariffs. We're also seeing that certain countries are refusing to trade with us at all. It's really not doing any of us a service. And I think it's a form of economic manipulation, yeah, something like that really is not the way the U.S. generally runs international trade policy. My concern is for the 99% of people who are living in the U.S. and in Indiana. 99% of us, those tariffs may hit us in different ways. We may notice them, we may not notice them, that kind of depends. But I think overall we are seeing that things are more expensive, and it is affecting us in a lot of ways. Medicines are more expensive because we import a lot of medicines, and the countries that we're importing those from, there are some that are exempt and there's some that are not. And I think we have one person who's a tariff expert who's in the 6th district, and I talked to him quite quite often, I mean, often enough that he's explained to me like what his job is with the tariffs. And it's incredibly complex what everyday working people who are working in these spaces are having to navigate on a daily basis that's changing. So it's really unfair to so many people that, this decision's being made without just by one person, essentially, and it's affecting so many people's lives. Again, my concern is the 99% of people, which is most all of us. What I think would help our economy that we can do from the federal level is institute that 1% wealth tax, and that's $32 million or above. So if you don't have $32 million, you're okay. And if you do have $32 million and $32 million and $1, that would be 1%. So I think when we look at it, in realistic numbers and not just say, oh, well, I make $300,000 a year, I'm wealthy. We're talking different scale of wealth. And again, these are all proposals that are out there. They're nothing new. They're the ones that make the most sense, that help the most people. And, if you have billions and billions of dollars, of course, the percentage would probably go up to be able to really put money to good use to help the 99% of the people in our country. I think we really need to reclassify how we do corporate taxes at the level that we have people hiding offshore to shield themselves from those taxes. I'm not talking about, mom on Main Street who has a children's clothing store. I'm not talking about somebody who has 5 employees. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about large, multi-million, billion-dollar corporation.
Amazon, Google, Microsoft.
Those kinds of taxes, right. They do need to pay their fair share, because mom on Main Street with a clothing store, she's paying them. I guarantee you, she's paying them. She's paying way more than these big multinational companies are paying. I'm not talking about the auto mechanic that runs his own shop. I'm not talking about any of those, true small businesses that are under 25 people. I'm talking about big business.
Well, even like bigger small businesses, even if they had 100 people, I don't think you'd be talking about those companies.
Yeah, usually not. Yeah. So
yeah, maybe it's a tech company or something. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably a few, and yeah, there's going to be a few that whatever. But I think overall, we really need to be smart about, how we're doing this. And I think we can. And so part of that is redefining what those terms mean. And again, this is all set out, it's not rocket science policy. It's been put out there before. It's been put in bills before. We just need to stand up for it, fight for it, and see, can we put people's lives back where people have breathing room? CEO pay right now, a lot of it is just out of hand. And there's a proposal in a lot of these bills that have been put forth that if your company pays your CEO more than 50 times the average worker's salary, then they have to pay an extra tax. I think that makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't it? If you're paying your CEO 50 times what somebody's making on the job, that's 50 workers.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, it's way worse than that. I saw some statistics that a lot of CEO pay is actually like 900% higher than their average worker, at least for Amazon. And we're not talking Jeff Bezos. We're talking about a different CEO at Amazon makes 900% more than the average worker at Amazon. That's unacceptable.
And so when we look at universal health care and affordable childcare and paid family leave and things like that, this is how we fund those things. We don't fund it off the backs of working people. Working people will still pay their taxes, their share. Actually, under a lot of these programs, working people's taxes will go down. And if you make under 50,000, I think, or 60,000, then it'll go way down, because working people making that level of money are the ones right now who are funding everything. And it's backwards. It's just backwards.
It's
And
regressive.
yeah, and I think we really need to pay close attention to this because we cannot keep putting our country on the backs of everyday working people to the point that they're breaking.
I think that we are broken. People are so individualistic and can be so hateful. I think we're there. And I think in order to get away from that, we have to start by working on wealth inequality.
I do too. And community. And I think once people have breathing room, I think we're seeing community start to come together. And I think building those community and making those community connections stronger, I think that's how we get there to be able to get rid of the wealth inequality and build wealth equality among all, and build, universal health care so we're all taken care of. And I think, so I'm a biologist, and I look at systems and webs of organisms and interrelatedness, and this is exactly the same, because you can't you can't focus on one area without another area, lagging behind. And I think that's the point that we're at, and it's not sustainable. And I think we're seeing that.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit quickly about data centers. It's a big topic in Indiana that Hoosiers care about, because the way that Indiana is letting these data centers come in is causing utilities to skyrocket around Indiana. So do we need some federal guidelines to protect people in general from these data centers?
Well, right now, I don't know if you know, but utilities in Indiana have gone up over 20% in 5 years. That's an enormous increase, and people are not able to afford it. I think there's a lot of things that we can address around the data center talk. Utilities is one of them. Speaking on data centers and utilities, I think if we push the expansion of our previous Infrastructure Act that was pretty successful until it started being, rolled back, that will help us move toward more local renewable energy. It gave us efficiency rebates. It gave us, insulation rebates, heat pump rebates. It gave us ways that people could save money on energy by making their homes or where they live, or properties that they have for renters, more efficient. I think our state, and I'm not sure how at the federal level, if I don't think you can do this at the federal level, but we need rate caps on our utilities, at least at the state level. But at the federal level, we can do those assistance programs for low-income people for energy. I know that there's a lot of talk about how they're going to provide energy for data centers. And in 2 of the county meetings I was at the week before last, they talked about how there's plenty of energy and no one needs to worry. And, they don't have to worry about energy. There's plenty of electricity for all of this. And, yeah, they'll be testing the generators, but, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And then we had the winter storm, and both of those counties said, hey, y'all in these rural areas, hold back on your electricity use. Don't turn your thermostats up real high, because we're afraid we're going to have a brownout.
Yeah, because Indiana consumes more energy currently than it produces. So that makes sense.
Right. So we're not getting the whole truth from our state government and our legislators on these data centers. And they're putting a lot of things off and saying, well, this will be in the proposal, and we're not really seeing a lot of that data up front. We're not seeing minutes from city or county meetings be put out in a timely manner. There's a lot of non-disclosure agreements that are hiding a lot of details or a lot of work that's being done. There are over 70 proposals in Indiana currently. I think there have been 5 that have been withdrawn, and I think there are somewhere between 7 and 10 that are done but in the process of being built or have been built. I think those are close to the numbers. But the companies that are pushing these are billion-dollar companies, and we're giving them 50-year tax breaks. We need the 50-year tax breaks, and the companies need to be paying the 50 years of taxes, because that's the state we're in right now, is that we're asking working people to supplement, again, these billion-dollar companies on their backs of their hard work, and let these companies walk in scot-free and say, well, it's for the shareholders. Well, we're stakeholders in our communities, and we're the stakeholders that are going to be paying for this. And I think lower quality of life for us, whether it's financial or environmental or more pollution, footing the bill for this is just irresponsible for our state government to push onto us while they walk away with profits.
Yeah, and it doesn't even talk, you're talking about the infrastructure too. Like they are saying that, oh, they don't have to pay for the infrastructure. Hoosiers are going to pay for that infrastructure. So that's more taxation.
Right.
It's just irresponsible, in my opinion. But we are running close to the end of the hour. So I wanted to thank you again for coming on, but I also want to give you some time to tell people where they can find you, where to donate to you. You are a grassroots campaign, so every dollar counts. So do not be afraid to just give $5, few dollars here, a cup of coffee, whatever you have available. She will take it gladly, but tell them where they can find you, Cinde.
So we are at WIRTH4congress.com, and you'll find a donation link there. And yes, if you are able, give $1, give $5, give $1 monthly or $5 monthly. We have a lot of people doing that. That actually helps our campaign to be able to do the things that we need to do, be able to get the word out more. We are grassroots. I don't take big PAC money. I'm an ordinary Hoosier who's worked hard to be able to serve Hoosiers. Jefferson Shreve is a 1%er, and I live our values while Jefferson Shreve buys his elections. I don't have 590 or 620 million, whatever he has. So I'm not a billionaire making money from stock and insider trading. Sorry. I am a teacher and a scientist fighting for affordable healthcare, affordable housing, affordable childcare, paid family leave, and strong public schools. So if that resonates with you, send us a few bucks and let us know, because every dollar that we get from a different person shows how much more support we have, and it's growing every day.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining me. I am looking forward to see how it turns out for you and what you do in the future.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And everybody have a good, safe weekend and try to stay warm.